Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this evening, and we're live, we're national. Looking forward to taking your calls tonight and having some conversation with you on our late-night national town hall conversation, which I do encourage you to join. 833-482-5337 is our phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, and what a day, right? Plenty in the news today. Donald Trump held a 108-minute question and answer press conference. I got a couple of nuggets from that we're going to play for you. Mark Zuckerberg, he became the new Elon Musk today. He's a new free speech absolutist all of a sudden after censoring conservatives for nearly, 9 years? Almost a decade. Now he's decided to change his tune. We're going to talk about that and the changes at Facebook, Instagram, and the other platforms that he has under the Meta umbrella. Joe Biden wants to ban water heaters. We're going to see what happens with that as well. And a bunch of crazy schemes from the Democrats that we're going to be taking apart one by one. But I want to start off with El Trumpito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. The president-elect, who had a press conference today. And let me tell you, I mean, just in a nutshell, he's talking about a lot of things. And you've probably heard about some of this, but quite interesting stuff. Some of it might be fodder. Some of it is clearly serious. And I think it's just interesting to see how Trump rolls, right? The way he moves in this space. Some people are talking about, well, we're preparing our team to, during transition, right? There's transition talk. You've got, the Obamas, the Bidens, those people that come and say, we're looking to do a big thing, blah, blah, blah. All this kind of talk, right? Trump comes in, he's got talk, but there's a whole lot of action, right? There's a lot of action. You've got world leaders that are responding to the things he's saying. He's talking about taking back the Panama Canal. He's not only talking about taking back the Panama Canal, he's talking about taking possession of Greenland. He's talking about renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Listen to this.
Mexico's really in trouble, a lot of trouble. Very dangerous place. And we're going to be announcing a future date pretty soon. We're going to change, because we do most of the work there and it's ours. We're going to be changing, sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name.
The Gulf of America. Now, again, taking back the Panama Canal, making Canada a U.S. state, that's something he's floating as well. Now, listen, I got to tell you, I take a little exception to this, a little umbrage, right? Why? Because, hold on a second. I thought Puerto Rico was in line to become the 51st state forever and a day. Now, I know that a lot of people like to listen to Mitch McConnell and AOC, who believe that if Puerto Rico became a state, that somehow, magically, everybody would be a left-wing lunatic and make 2 Democrat senators. But I think the elections spoke for themselves. I think the last number of governors in Puerto Rico have spoken for themselves. The last one endorsed Trump in 2020 and in 2024. The current one was the congressperson, the resident commissioner, the non-voting member of Congress that Puerto Rico gets, and Jennifer Gonzalez Colon. And she has been a Republican her entire time in service to the Congress. So I have to say, I don't see what Mitch McConnell sees, what AOC sees, where these people think that all of a sudden people in Puerto Rico are just going to say, no, thanks, especially when there's been 3 elections, right? 3 plebiscite votes where they said, raise your hand if you want to become the 51st state. And all 3 times by a margin higher than 80%, the people voted, the people spoke, and they said, yes, we want to become a state. So I think it makes sense to do that. But the holdup has always been in Washington. Now, there are some other ramifications there. I get it. A lot of it's political, though. And Senator Marco Rubio has always been an advocate of Puerto Rico becoming the 51st state. And I'm hopeful that now that he's got a cozier position as Secretary of State, he might have a little weigh-in with El Trumpito, who also is pretty partial. It's some of the people, I think, in the outer circle that don't have all their facts straight and are a little bit afraid politically of what might happen. But come on, you got to take risks. And this isn't one I think we're going to lose. Anyway, back to everything else. Greenland. I want to get into Greenland. I think we have an audio clip of this Greenland stuff. Do we have audio for Greenland, Count Delacula? We have, oh, my favorite, the mustache himself, former Ambassador Bolton. Go ahead.
The one way to screw this up is to keep talking about it publicly. Officials in Greenland are elected by the people. Officials in Denmark are elected by the people. You keep talking about buying them as if it's a real estate deal. You're hardening their positions. You're pushing them into a corner that will make it very difficult to achieve what is the real American national interest here, which is preserving the security of the North American landmass and obviously, critically, the United States itself.
You know, in true Rich Valdez fashion, I'm going to give John Bolton, former Ambassador Bolton, a name, a nickname, and it's going to be John El Bigote Bolton, because El Bigote means the mustache, and he is himself a mustache. I think at one point his mustache had its own Twitter account. So John El Bigote Bolton, that was him on CNN today saying that Trump is going to screw up our relations with Greenland if he publicly continues talking about purchasing it. Now, I could see where those concerns come from and where they might be true, but ultimately, I think deals are deals, right? And not every deal is, he's speaking like a diplomat, right? Diplomats use their words for everything. Words are very important. But I think business people, deal makers, they don't necessarily always use words. They kind of use the facts, right? You look at the situation, you say, look, we need this, and here's why you should give us what we need. And that's more of Trump's style, and I get that. It's a very matter-of-fact way of dealing with things. It's not about finessing people. It's not about being diplomatic. It's not about how nice my words are, how velvety I sound. None of that matters. What really matters are the facts. Now, I think I full well believe this is not the first time we've heard Trump talk about Greenland merging with the United States. So if this is something that he's serious about, and I believe he is, he spoke about it today in the press conference, and we'll get you that audio in a little bit, and he said it's vital for our national security. So if Trump believes that, and he's the leader of the free world, he's the president of the United States, in a few more days, he'll be 2 weeks, right? He'll be sworn in. I think it's something that we should have a conversation about. And the last thing I think we want to do is keep it undercover and just come out and say, hey, guys, by the way, this is where I think people go wrong. And they don't realize that by Trump talking publicly about these things, he's sparking a national conversation. People don't give Trump enough credit. But let me tell you, very few people were engaged in political discourse and knowing things about the Constitution and citing article and down to the paragraph of the Constitution, unless they were listening to talk radio, right, or involved in academia, or somehow involved in this type of work. But come Trump, you got all sorts of Twitter people that are Googling different parts of the Constitution to find out what's constitutional, what's not, right? Can he use the Insurrection Act to save the election in 2020? This has been going on for a number of years. So I have to give Trump credit for making a lot of armchair quarterbacks actually a little bit more than armchair, right? They're a lot more equipped. They've become more civically engaged. And he did that by bringing it to the people. Henceforth, he can fill stadium upon stadium upon stadium with people. Now, this is not a slight on John El Bigote Bolton, but can you fill a stadium? I know that I can't. So I'm not going to sit here and, say that I think what you're doing is wrong, because I think what he's doing has worked, and he's been very successful at it. Now, will he get Canada? Trump just put a post on Truth Social, I don't know, a little while ago. And it's a picture of the United States with Canada connected to it like a silhouette, and the interior of it is the United States flag. Very interesting, right? The callers to this program that are Canadian, they love America. Now, I'm not saying they don't want to be Canadian anymore, but when I heard Trump today at this press conference talking about the, we want to alleviate the burden on the United Kingdom and the royal family of what's going on in Canada. Again, it could be more trolling, but it seems like his trolling got Trudeau to resign, as his trolling seems to be pretty effective. So again, not a love fest on El Trumpito by any means, although it typically is. But this is really more of a conversation on, should we take it seriously? And I think we should. Does it mean it'll happen? No, it doesn't mean it'll happen. But it does mean, I think, if Trump is serious about it, he's going to do everything he can to make it happen. Now, just the same way he said that he would annihilate Hamas in many ways. He said there would be hell to pay, and we're going to get to that momentarily. But I also want to talk about all of these developments that are coming up with these attacks that we recently saw right after New Year's, right? You had the attack in Bourbon Street, the attack on the Trump Tower in Vegas, and the FBI still kind of mum is the word on a lot of things. We're going to have a FBI agent, a former FBI agent, that's a little bit critical, going to join us to explain exactly what's going on from her perspective. So keep it locked right here. There's a lot more to come. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation, and we left off with an update on what's going on, because there was some news today that broke out of Houston, Texas, where they found some interesting materials inside the storage locker as the investigation into the attack on Bourbon Street continues. Listen to this.
The block's now quiet on Mandeville Street in New Orleans. A day earlier, we watched as the ATF and FBI searched this Airbnb rented by terror suspect Shamsuddin Jabbar. Soot and burn marks on the front door show where a fire started not long after the New Year's Day attack on Bourbon Street.
There's one part disbelief and then one part lingering fear.
Neighbor Elliot Barron told us federal officials cleared out late Thursday.
I mean, we're all reeling with the Bourbon Street. Look how close to home it is. It's a little too close to home.
The FBI says Jabbar proclaimed his support for ISIS in videos posted just before he plowed into revelers. Video shows the truck driving at a high rate of speed down Bourbon Street, nearly hitting several people. WFA obtained a bulletin issued by the FBI and Homeland Security on Friday. It warns of the threat of retaliatory attacks inspired by this attack. The bulletin says ISIS supporters have celebrated it.
Was there something missed? Was there some type of red flag with this guy?
Jabbar's youngest brother said the family learned of his involvement on New Year's Day.
I kind of just froze. Was just in complete shock.
Harris County divorce records show Jabbar was deeply in debt and his real estate business failing. His brother says he didn't know Jabbar had been radicalized.
Most of the time, our conversations were for laughs, we were really positive.
Meanwhile, on Bourbon Street, there's a growing memorial to the 14 people who lost their lives. City officials have since put in place temporary metal barriers to try to prevent a repeat of the New Year's Day massacre. In New Orleans, I'm Tanya Iser.
So that's the update on what's going on, and yet we don't know much more from the FBI. But I want to get the take of a former FBI special agent and in my opinion, somebody who understands this way better than I do. Nicole Parker, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So there's this information that's come out today about sulfuric acid being found in a storage facility tied to Mr. Jabbar. How important is this tidbit of information? And do you think the FBI has been forthcoming enough, or is this par for the course?
Every single piece of evidence that's gathered at this point is extremely important to the investigation. And so they're going to be looking through everything and piecing it all together. And it does take time. As a former FBI agent, I do understand and respect that there's certain parts of an investigation that you don't go out and share with the general public, that doesn't need to remain confidential for obvious reasons. But I think in this investigation, we're noticing that straight from the get-go, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana made it very clear that the FBI would be transparent. And he said, look, I'll give you some time to conduct this investigation, but basically we're not going to play games on this, and the American people are going to have answers. I can respect that based on the recent track record of the FBI. I just think that a lot of Americans have lost trust in the agency. I myself walked away from the FBI. It became very politically and socially weaponized to the point that I didn't really even recognize it. And many of my other colleagues, there are thousands and thousands of agents who feel the same way that I do. Many of them have retired, but many of them are just keeping their heads low, staying off the radar, working hard and waiting to collect their pensions.
Is this a decision that you regret, or are you happy that you decided to leave the FBI given the direction they were headed?
I have never had a regret of that decision. I am a woman of faith. I make my decisions very methodically, prayerfully, and it was a very long and difficult decision to make, but based on the direction that the agency was going, the lack of leadership, Christopher Wray failed to acknowledge the failures of the FBI. When you have someone in charge who can't even acknowledge the problems, there's slim to no chance that it's going to change. And so, frankly, since I left the FBI, I hate to say this, but it actually has gotten worse. I left about 2 years ago, and there have been many more failures that have come out since I left. I really hope and pray, though, with President Trump coming in and appointing new leadership, that they can begin to reform and get the FBI back on track. It was once known as the premier law enforcement agency in the world, and it will take a lot of work to get it back to that point. But I do believe that President Trump is committed to making the FBI great again.
What is your expectation with, in the minute or so we have remaining before our break, the expectation you have for this particular investigation? Do you think that the FBI will become more forthcoming, presumably with a new director in Kash Patel coming soon? I would presume it does. But with this particular investigation and the people that are on the ground now, can we expect more, or do you think we've gotten what we're going to get?
No, I think you can expect more, because I think, quite frankly, the new leadership is going to demand it. And I think that those that have been less transparent realize that a new sheriff is coming in town, and that's not going to work anymore.
Nicole Parker, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot, former FBI special agent. I appreciate you being here. I hope to have you back soon.
My pleasure. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. We continue our discussion on what happened at Trump's press conference and what's going on with the rest of America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Donald Trump is saying that President Biden is trying to sabotage the transition, as it were. And you'll remember, of course, 4 years ago, Donald Trump didn't even participate in a transition of power, really, from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. So how do you feel about that charge?
Well, once again, Donald Trump is transferring to others that which he is often guilty of. It's not even in Joe Biden's personality at all to do anything like that. Joe Biden believes in this country. He believes in the American people. And he's going to do everything he possibly can, and he has done that to make sure that the American people get treated in the way this country looks for them to be treated. So he is not going to sabotage anything.
That is Congressman James Clyburn on CNN with John Berman discussing whether Joe El Baboso Biden will sabotage the Trump transition. Now, I have to agree here that I don't think that Biden is going to intentionally sabotage anything. I think he just is a blundering baboso, and he tends to just blunder things all on his own. And the reason I say that is because I think now when it comes to power grabs or money grabs, it's not sabotage. That's just intentional. And it's not sabotaging the transition. It's sabotaging our future. But when it comes to the actual transition, I think he's actually been playing ball, right? I think him and Trump agree on the U.S. Steel Nippon deal. I think him and Trump agree on student loans all of a sudden, right? To me, that seems like deference. It seems like President Biden decided to say today, you know what, look, my gig here is up. I'm done. And I'm not going to fight every battle, right? I'm going to fight the ones that line my pockets. And if they don't line my pockets, what am I going to screw this guy over for? My take, perhaps I'm being too generous, but that's what it seems like to me. But El Trompito wasn't pulling any punches tonight, right? Or earlier today at Mar-a-Lago. He was very serious with a lot of the comments that he made, right? He talked about pardoning people in January 6th cases, which I think is a good thing because, shoot, we have to get there, right? I mean, we've got that. Hopefully, that's one of those day one action items, just like what happened with the Homan situation, right? Where Tom Homan says he's taking care of things day one. I truly believe that's going to happen as well. And my hope is that many of these initiatives with the right leadership team that Trump is putting in place will actually happen. Now, Trump continued, right? He went into talking about the Panama Canal, another interesting international thing. And I find these things interesting because I've always been criticized, right, by I'm going to call them the new right. The new right has criticized me because they say I'm a neocon, which I guess I can wear this badge proudly if you'd like. But I don't believe that the United States should play second fiddle to anybody on the world stage. That's just my opinion. The minute you step back and quote unquote mind your own business, guess what happens? Somebody else fills that vacuum. For example, Joe El Baboso Biden does nothing to help U.S. monetary policy. Instead, he goes on a spending spree. Build back better. We're going to build back better. I got hairy legs, right? And then all of a sudden, guess what happens? Our dollar becomes worth less, right? Inflation kicks in. You need more dollars to buy more things. Life gets very challenging very quickly. Why? Because he didn't pay attention to protecting the dollar. Now, I know there's some people that are absolutists against fiat currency, and they just absolutely hate it, but I'm 46. I've never lived a day of my life without our beloved U.S. dollar, the fiat currency. It's always worked for me. So I have a different perspective than those of you that are, before 1969, 1970, whatever it was when Nixon did what he did. So the point I'm making here is Trump comes back and makes it more robust, right? He's talking about protecting the dollar, right? He's talking about investment in America. This is a very big deal, right? There was just some talk today about, I think, $20 billion of investment by Hussein Sajewani, right? He's at the press conference with Trump today, and he says that he's excited for Trump's leadership because he's planning on putting this money in America. Why? Because he thinks he's going to get it back. Listen to this.
It's been amazing news for me and my family when he was elected in November. We've been waiting 4 years to increase our investments in U.S. to a very large amount of money. We are a company operating in more than 20 countries around the world. We have delivered more than 45,000 luxury units and another 45,000 in the pipeline. In data center, we are in 10 countries around the world, in Asia, Europe, and Middle East. And we're very, very excited now with his leadership and his open strategy and policy to encourage businesses to come to U.S. For the last 4 years, we've been waiting for this moment. And we're planning to invest $20 billion and even more than that if the opportunity in the market allow us. But at the moment, we're planning $20 billion in data center, catering for the AI and cloud business for the hyperscalers.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Mr.
Great
President.
honor. Thank you very much. So nice.
So nice indeed. Now, listen, why weren't we hearing comments like that, the ones we just heard from Hussein Sajewani, or the ones that we heard from the chairman of Sun Bank from Japan last month, right? Why didn't we hear about those? Because they weren't happening. Why? Because Biden was asleep at the wheel. He was ignoring monetary policy. He was destroying the dollar, perhaps not intentionally, right? Kind of like a philanderer. A philanderer is typically not trying to destroy the life or the future of their children, the security of their children, the belief of, the family unit for their entire family. They're just trying to have a good time, right? They're just trying to enjoy themselves. And in the process, they destroy everything. Well, in the same way, I think Joe Biden was just being a corrupt politician. He wasn't looking to destroy the dollar or harm the United States financial position. He just figured, I'm just going to do what I got to do. And there's enough to go around for everybody, right? I'll just keep giving more to Zelensky, and he'll keep giving more to us through the back door. But in reality, what happened? BRICS, right? Something that's been around for, I don't know. There's always been a type of BRICS movement out there. But yet, this one that's 15, 20 years old, whatever it is, started to take root. When? Now. Right? People started taking them seriously with new countries joining on, saying, yeah, you know what? New countries said, hey, we're going to buy fuel from Putin. We're going to do this, that, and the third. All sorts of alliances and deals were getting brokered at our expense. Why? Because we were minding our own business. Right? That's what Biden was doing. He was like, I'm not getting involved. You don't want to buy U.S. energy? Don't buy it. Buy it from each other. Do what you got to do. I'm not getting involved. I'm staying off the world stage. That's what happens when you mind your own business. This is what happens when you don't have skin in the game. So today with El Trompito making these announcements, I couldn't have been happier because I believe that the United States has to be a global player and has to be a dominant global player. I believe in America first, but I don't solely believe in America only, right? I think America has a role to fulfill across the world. And I know a lot of people take exception with my belief in American exceptionalism, and it's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. But I know that my dollar isn't worth as much if we're not doing what Trump is doing, saying things like, we're taking Greenland, we're taking Canada, we're taking back the Panama Canal, checking China, checking Iran. All hell's going to break loose, right? None of those things happen if you don't bring that type of game, that A game. So kudos to El Trompito, focusing on America first, even internationally. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. now. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Now, in addition to talking about everything from energy to the FBI to renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, Trump also talked about what he said he would do. And he would make all hell break loose if the hostages aren't released by Hamas by the day that he gets sworn in. Check this out.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. They should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that. But there was, and many people are killed. They're no longer hostages. I have people from Israel and others calling, begging me to get, we had also people there from the United States, just so you know. They're holding some so-called hostages from the U.S. But I've had mothers come to me and fathers crying, can I get the body of their son back? Can I get the body of their daughter back? That beautiful girl where they threw her in the car, pulled her by her ponytail and threw her in the car like she was a sack of potatoes. I said, what happened to her? Sir, she's dead. Like a 19, 20-year-old beautiful girl. And the way they treated her. And I just say it this very simply. Steve's got a job to do. He's a great guy, great negotiator, great person. They respect him over there already. It's what we needed over there. We have people that know everything about the Middle East, but they can't speak properly. They don't know. He's a great negotiator. That's what I needed. I could have sent that gentleman right over there, Hussein. He's a great negotiator. There are people, they're rare. Great negotiators are very rare, like a great surgeon. But we have the right person. But I tell this, I don't want to hurt the negotiation. If the deal isn't done before I take office, which is now going to be 2 weeks, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
All hell will break out. Listen. When you double down on comments like that, all you can do is make good on them. And I'm not a betting man, but if I had to be, and if I was in the prediction game, if I had a crystal ball, I would probably say that we're going to see the hostages. Just my guess. Just my guess. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, you guys can call me and tell me I was wrong. By the way, I haven't even given the phone number. Forgive me. 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Taking your calls this segment and then next segment if you guys want to chime in on anything. And speaking of chiming in, yesterday, and I always appreciate the commentary. I get some commentary on social media and whatnot. And somebody on one of the social platforms said to me, you'll never fill Jimbo's shoes. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not really here to fill Jimbo's shoes, right? Jimbo filled Jimbo's shoes. And this is a lesson he taught me because he replaced Larry King. And in many ways, he said, I can never really replace Larry King because, we're just entirely different people and these are legendary people. And I got that. I totally, in my conversation with Jimbo on his final program, it circled around this part of the conversation. And I thought to myself, I kept reading this guy's commentary because it wasn't just a critique on, hey, who are you? You're a schmuck. I don't like you. That's fine. I get that. I don't care. What I found interesting was he said, and then you erupt into this Hispanic English vomit. And I felt like saying, yeah, tell me how you really feel. I find it interesting. Because, and this is just a little bit of an aside, but I'm a New Yorker, right? I grew up in Brooklyn, and I was born in Brooklyn. I really spent most of my growing up in Hudson County, New Jersey. And I can tell you this. As a young man, I started listening to talk radio in New York City. And one of the legends in talk radio is a guy named Bob Grant. And Bob Grant was killing the game. I mean, he was fantastic. And he was a short Italian man. I believe his name was Robert Giganti. And he was from that era of radio where ethnic names need not apply. So he went by Grant. Just like I know another guy. He's retired now, Dave Labrosi. He went by Dave Anthony as his on-air name. My name's Rich Valdez, and I go by Rich Valdez, and I'm grateful that I don't have to change my name because it's too ethnic. But that was once a thing in the United States. And Bob Grant, who, really Robert Gigante, he was a very funny guy. And every now and again he would grumble because he was like a curmudgeon on the radio, and he would complain about whatever, like Maronna mia, he would get into these little Italian groanings, and it made the show priceless for me. I thought it was great listening to old tapes of his, and all I can say is I never would have thought you go into this Hispanic Italian or English Italian vomit like this guy told me, right? This just lets me know this guy's obviously a little bit envious. He wishes he could have a show like this one, and I get it. I do get that. And I get that I rub people the wrong way. Half the reason I'm here is to rub people the wrong way, truth be told. But ultimately, I wanted to address this man. His name was Antonio. I forget his last name, but he gets a nickname too. It's Antonio the A-hole. And Antonio, you're welcome to call the show if you want to give me a piece of your mind. You're always welcome to do that. 833-482-5337. We're live in the 9 o'clock hour. We're live in the 10 o'clock hour. We're live in the 11 o'clock hour. I want you to make sure that you call in whenever we do open phones across America and share whatever is on your mind, because I'm happy to hear it. One thing I don't do is shy away from a dissenting caller, right? In the years that I worked for the great one, Mark Levin, and had the opportunity, the privilege to cover his show, it's one of my favorite things to do is to spar with the libs and those that disagreed with me. So I appreciate the feedback as much as I don't agree with it. I appreciate it, and I want to keep the conversation going. So we're going to continue with a couple of more clips, a couple of more thoughts, and a whole lot more to come in the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we are here, and with limited time, I want to give a glimpse of a cut. I don't have time for all of it, but Trump was talking about the Department of Justice and the FBI today at Mar-a-Lago. Give me a taste of that, will you, Count?
The status of the FBI has gone down so far, and the status of the DOJ, or as I call it, the Department of Justice, it's the Department of Injustice, being laughed at all over the world. And
they're laughing at it all over the world. And this is why we had our conversation earlier with Nicole, because this has to end, right? If people can't believe in their government, if people can't believe in the FBI, I'm not saying you have to trust politicians. I don't trust politicians. I don't trust most people, right? I was born in Brooklyn. It's kind of innate. But we have to believe in the system. Ultimately, you just have to believe. Otherwise, all hope is lost. But, amigos, all hope is not lost. Anyway, straight ahead, we're going to talk about free speech. It's on a comeback. There's a new Elon Musk, and his name is Zuckerberg. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to be here with you, your liberty-loving Latino amigo El Macho, and I'm really thrilled. I'm hoping that you'll join me tonight, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I've got plenty to talk about. I'm hoping that we have enough time to get to everything that's on the agenda. But, of course, El Trompito making a lot of very tough commentary tonight, or earlier today, I should say, at Mar-a-Lago, talking about $20 billion in new investment from a billionaire investor that was at the press conference. He's talking about taking back the Gulf of Mexico. He's talking about taking back the Panama Canal for national security reasoning. And he really went into detail on this. I want you to check this one out. Listen to this.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. And I believe that's why Jimmy Carter lost the election, even more so than the hostages. Those two things.
Now, speaking of hostages, he also made some tough claims tonight about all hell breaking loose. And these are claims that I think that he will back up 100% if Hamas does not release those hostages come January 20th. But it didn't stop there. There was a lot of foreign policy talk, a lot of talk about what's going on the world stage. He talked about not only taking back the Panama Canal, he talked about making Canada the 51st U.S. state, of course, to my chagrin, hoping that Puerto Rico would become the 51st state. But nonetheless, a very interesting conversation that's going on right now. And tweeting it out, right? Not tweeting, but posting it on Truth Social, his social media platform. He posted a photo with the silhouette of the United States and Canada together, all filled in with the U.S. flag, which I thought was very telling. Again, whether it's trolling, whether it's serious, either way, he's the president-elect, and you should take these things seriously. So it all comes down to what he uses as leverage. And Trump has a lot of things as leverage, the power that he has as president. But guess what? Is the Trump today drastically different than the Trump, I don't know, a month ago or 2 months ago before he'd won the election? No, in my opinion, no. Because what he leverages is free speech, right? He uses his ability to reach people, his fan base, his critics, and the fact that the media is usually against him. I think he's learned how to use this as a superpower, right? Because he dominates headlines day after day after day. And it's not only a skill, I think it's an art form that he's developed here. But free speech is exactly what he uses to get everything done. He talks about it. He gets people interested in it. He creates this national and international conversation about very important and complex topics. And And he communicates these ideas in such an interesting way. Perhaps you don't agree with me, but I think one of the most brilliant things Trump did was two things, right? One of the principal one for the campaign. He said, let's get a red hat and let's use Times New Roman font, right? A very simple font, and put "Make America Great Again" on this red trucker hat. And this became a phenomena globally. Amazing, right? Amazing. It became a fashion statement for so many people because it was a symbol of a movement. It meant so much to so many people, and still does. But I just find it fascinating. It was such a simple looking thing, right? Very simple idea. Very simple, very succinct. Then, 30 years Rush Limbaugh was on the air, maybe a little more. And the rest of us that have, followed in this wonderful industry that Rush has kind of carved out. Railing on the media day in and day out. Right? Our friends at MRC, the Media Research Center, same thing. Everybody's doing it. Trump comes, and again, not saying that we didn't lay down some foundation there, but Trump comes and in essence just says, "You're fake news." He just tells the media they're fake news. He calls them out every step of the way. And as a part of the movement, that was always part of the movement, right? Ridiculing, criticizing the press. But now it became opened up to people outside of the world of talk radio, outside of the people that, consumed cable news and consider themselves news junkies. Free speech became a thing because of TikTok, because of Instagram, because of Facebook, because of Twitter, now known as X. And now because of True Social, right? And he's been able to leverage this free speech in so many ways with simplifying messages. And that's how you get to the masses. So I want to talk about that because the head of Meta, which is the company that owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, they announced today that, or Zuckerberg, I should say, announced that he wants to be more like Elon Musk and that he wants to make some changes. Now, we're going to get into that in the next segment. But right here, I want you to hear a little bit about why he's doing that. And I think this had to do with some revelations that came out during the Twitter files when he said that it was the U.S. government that went to him. The Biden administration pushed him to censor you and me online through our own social media. Listen to this.
We're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The U.S. has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the U.S. government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the U.S. government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it.
So has Mark Zuckerberg become the new Elon Musk? Is he the new free speech absolutist? I don't know. I don't know if this guy's a fair weather friend that just goes whichever way the wind is blowing, whichever way he puts more money in his pocket. But I can tell you, these are the words that he should have been singing all along, right? This is what he should have been saying. So I want to get into what's going on in the world of social media as it pertains to free speech. I want to have this discussion, how we went from censoring, right, for the last 10 years at least, Zuckerberg has been censoring Americans, to now where all of a sudden, here we are. And he's saying we're going to work with President Trump to stop this because China has censored our apps from working in the country. Oh, look at that. It took China treating him the way he was treating us for him to wake up. Well, we're going to talk with somebody who knows a lot about what's going on with both free speech and what's happening in the social media world. And that's our buddy Dan Schneider from the MRC, and he's coming up straight ahead. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night. Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, Rich Valdez live with you until, the midnight hour. And our phone number, 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez. If you want to join our late-night national conversation, I encourage you to call. We're live till 1 a.m. on the East Coast on many stations. And if you're out in Hawaii, then it's afternoon drive and aloha. But I want to come back to this conversation on free speech because I think it's critical. Right? We just talked about how Trump leverages free speech in so much of his negotiation, right? In fact, this company he made, I think it was $4 billion on when he went public with Truth Social, the Trump Media Technology Group. He's in effect leveraging free speech, right? This is the business he's gotten into. He's a hotelier and a builder, and he's got golf courses, and now he's in the free speech business. And as is Elon Musk. And I think Musk broke the mold here for social media company owners in becoming a free speech absolutist, where he's rubbing off on his counterparts like Mark Zuckerberg, who we just heard from a moment ago, talking about how he's planning on helping President Trump in this next administration because it was the Biden administration that went to them way back when to censor Americans like you and me. And it wasn't that long ago that I was at dinner, right after Christmas, or maybe it was before Christmas, but after Thanksgiving, with some old friends. And I remember I was, somebody was saying, "Oh, I didn't see that you posted that on Instagram." And I was saying, I'm pretty sure you didn't see it because they're constantly putting these labels on me. Another friend of mine recently asked me and said, he showed me, he was next to me. He's like, "Oh, I just started following you on Instagram and look." And it said something like, "Are you sure you want to follow this person? This account is not notorious, but has repeated violations for posting false content." And I told them about it. And then around that time, first or second week of December, the husband of a friend of mine, he said, "I went to follow you and I didn't get that notice." So I said, "Oh, wow, they've eased up the censorship now that the election's over." But it seems like there's a whole shift going on in social media. So I want you to listen to this audio clip from Mark Zuckerberg talking about their new initiative to get rid of the fact checkers.
So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
I give him a liar, liar, pants on fire score for that one. I think this is expediency at its best. But I want to get the weigh-in from one of our experts on this, and that's our friend Dan Schneider. He's the VP of Free Speech America at the MRC, the Media Research Center. Dan, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Rich, Happy New Year. And welcome to Washington, D.C. I don't think it's a surprise that as Trump enters D.C., you are too.
Well, there we are. We're here. We're here to inform and be live and late night, and that's my favorite part about this stuff. Is always bringing listeners live content and great guests like you. Now, Dan, I know you're in the WMAL listening area, and I appreciate the welcome. But do you think that Zuckerberg is on the level here, or do you think that this is just him doing what he thinks is right because he got to play nice with Trump for the next 4 years?
Yeah, no, Rich. Lots of cynics think that Zuckerberg is doing this only because of fear of reprisals. Others are thinking, well, he's not going to live up to his end of the bargain. I actually have a very different point of view.
Good.
Zuckerberg has never been one of these radical woke mobsters. He's surrounded himself with those kinds of people, starting with Sheryl Sandberg, the longtime COO, and Nick Clegg was the Labour Party chief in the UK Parliament. There's no love for free speech in the UK.
He kind of took the opposite approach of Elon Musk, right? Where Elon Musk is going to war with Labour, and he was chummy with them. Right,
and so, but Zuckerberg himself is just one of those traditional Democrats, who's always valued free speech rights. It's the left who used to be even stronger on free speech than the right historically. And, he probably was really comfortable with a Bill Clinton administration, recognizing there are limits to the role of government and the government can't solve all problems. No conservative, but also not a radical lefty. And when he founded Facebook, it was supposed to be for free speech, purposes, but he's had all of these wokesters all around him. And I actually do know that he feared that if he tried to push Facebook back to the center, and by center, I mean neutrality, not weighing in, not censoring, that there'd be mass walkouts and he would just lose his company. But here's the thing. With Trump's reelection, there's been this realignment, not only within the Republican Party, but a reorientation among everybody in America. The half of Americans who were happy that he won were thrilled. The other half, I would say a majority of that other half, will admit that woke experiment and this whole censorship enterprise went way, way too far. Mm-hmm. They know politically they lost because of it. Culturally, they know that this just doesn't seem like America. Now, the most radical element, of course, they want to kill us all. But I think 75% of Americans, which includes a big chunk of his employees, are now open to the idea of Facebook becoming a free speech platform once again. Trump's victory has given him license to make it back what he wanted it to be.
Sounds good to me. I want to continue this discussion, but I want to factor in your thoughts on TikTok because that's influencing youth all across the place, all across the country, all across the globe. Folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Dan Schneider from the MRC, Free Speech America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Dan Schneider from the MRC. And before he was with the MRC, he was with CPAC, where he was the executive director. And he did a kick-butt job there, and he's a lawyer in his own right. He knows what he's talking about. And Dan Schneider, I want you to hear a clip of a psychologist that was on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's newscast. Listen to this.
The worst single product out there is TikTok. I'm coming to see that TikTok has a devastating impact on people's ability to pay attention. It's the most addictive. It sucks up time, and it's horrible. It's so effective that Meta copied it, with Instagram Reels, and YouTube copied it with YouTube Shorts. So the message for parents would be, I'd say the worst single thing for your kid is TikTok. I don't think anybody should be on TikTok, even adults, but certainly not kids going through puberty.
He says this is the worst platform to be on. Dan Snyder, what say you?
Wow, this is a good example of how many real issues there are with big tech. One of those big issues, of course, is censorship, as we discussed in the previous segment. Another is national security. And when it comes to TikTok, that's my chief concern. Another issue is how these platforms really are harmful to people, human beings, especially young people, the development of their minds. There are also transparency issues and lots of different issues. So when it comes to TikTok, what we know is the Chinese Communist Party does in fact control it, and it is a vessel through which the Chinese Communist Party hoovers up lots of data that they need to develop artificial intelligence programs to attack Americans' sovereignty. That's my chief concern.
Well, tell us a little bit how they do that.
How do they do it?
Yeah.
Well. So this algorithm, it is highly effective at hooking people. The data has shown really how people truly actually become addicted to it based on the movement of light and other factors.
Wow.
And I'm not a libertarian. I am a classical liberal, though, and so I do tend to think, well, people need to make their decisions and guard themselves from these things. But we do know the Chinese are using this for nefarious national security purposes, frankly, kind of like an offensive weapon.
Right.
They need, AI to function effectively has to have massive amounts of data, and this is their primary vehicle to suck up that data on Americans and then to use AI as a weapon against us. So that's my chief concern. On the free speech side, frankly, I'm less concerned. This is very different from what Facebook and Twitter used to do. Facebook, as of yesterday, used to do, which is manipulate their algorithms to silence people. TikTok, it's the content users and providers. It's just people who put stuff up there. If it's stuff I don't like, I don't have to watch it. But the bigger issue for me is this national security component.
Now, you guys have taken a look at the new study that's showing how they're doing what they do, and I know the Media Research Center tracks and monitors TikTok and their bias.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How are you guys, I guess, approaching this? What are you guys doing to attack the problem?
Yeah, so now I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I did say that from the free speech side, I've got fewer concerns because I was making reference to people who provide content.
Sure.
But it also has been shown that the Chinese government is manipulating the algorithm to highlight the kind of content that is disruptive to American society. For example, it's very anti-Israel content. They're pushing this narrative that really is divisive and tearing apart our country at that youth level, where young people are being misinformed that Israel is, an apartheid state or is an occupier. And these sort of things are just factually inaccurate. But the Chinese are using this to divide our nation. So we have looked at how TikTok operates in this way. We've done studies that show really how the huge ratio advantage that sort of a radical message comes through, and it does appear to that ratio does appear to be greater than the actual amount of content that's provided. There does appear to be an algorithm that is promoting radical ideas at the expense of other ideas. But it's going to be interesting because on January 19th, by law, TikTok has to divest itself of certain aspects of its European or U.S. operations, unless, of course, Joe Biden grants an extension of that deadline. And what we also know is that Donald Trump is big fans of TikTok. So I actually do think we're going to eventually we're going to see a deal where a company like Oracle or some other company like that will buy out that component of TikTok. The Chinese have claimed that they're never going to allow that, but I think the Chinese are probably more practical, a lot of bluster and blow, but I think they're going to want to continue operating in the U.S.
Right, and it sounds to me like they were never going to allow that to happen while Biden was president. I think, now that Trump is president, they know he means business because he was harping on this last time, right, before he left office in 2019. I think that's a big deal there. 2020, I should say. And something else I wanted to talk about was the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court has been entertaining this case, right, hearing arguments on TikTok. Yeah. Where is this going to take us? What's your thought?
Well, Rich, I'm actually very, very concerned about this. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals got some might say they ended up in the right place for somebody like me who cares about national security, but they got there all the wrong way. They said it's okay to censor speech. It's okay for the government to censor
I remember
speech.
that.
That's why it's okay. That's why it's okay for this law to take effect. That is just wrong. The government should never be censoring legal content, constitutionally protected speech. Right. But I'm really concerned that people like Justice Kavanaugh, who does tend to be more like a Chamber of Commerce kind of guy, a Chamber of Commerce Republican, who thinks that big is always good, and that a platform has free speech rights, when it's not even their content, that's being put on there. It's other people's content, and these platforms are merely conduits for which we put our content on there. So I'm very concerned that the Supreme Court's going to get the reasoning all wrong on this, not to support the law based on national security grounds, but on this ridiculous notion that a platform can also be a publisher simultaneously, and you can't be one and the other simultaneously. And I know this gets tricky, but these platforms are more like telecom companies. They have to provide a service. They then are immune from liability. So when that bomber calls in a bomb attack using AT&T, AT&T is not liable because it's a platform.
Right, and they're not saying you can't make bomb threats, right? You say whatever you want to say on their phone lines, whether they like it or not.
Well, AT&T is not going to exclude somebody until, of course, they're breaking the law. Then they do. But AT&T is not going to be liable if somebody, is selling drugs on, making phone lines or calling in bomb threats on telephone lines. And that's where all these tech platforms need to be. They need to be providers that are immune from liability, but they can't discriminate. But these big tech platforms, they want it both ways. They don't want to be held liable, and they also want to discriminate because they've got a radical social agenda that they're trying to push on us.
Dan Schneider, I wish I had better news. No, it's not that confusing, honestly. I think you're right. I think we've got some folks in the Supreme Court that think the same way that Zuckerberg did. And I think your explanation initially was a really good one in that Zuckerberg may not be a radical leftist. He may not wake up and feel like AOC all out crazy when he wakes up in the morning. But he does go with the flow when he hears, Trump is a threat to democracy. If you don't censor these people's speech, you're threatening democracy. And people tend to catch on, right? It's contagious when you have this type of propaganda. And it seems like it's affected the minds of some of our justices. So, I mean, it'll be what it'll be, but I'm with you. It's concerning.
The stalwart First Amendment free speech advocate we've got on our court who gets all of this, who understands it better than anybody else, Justice Clarence Thomas.
Sure.
He is just brilliant. He gets it. I just wish he could carry the court, carry the majority, convince these other justices of the right way to approach this case.
Yeah. What would we do if it wasn't for Alito and Clarence Thomas? Dan,
great.
I appreciate
it,
brother. tell everybody how they can learn more about Free Speech America and all the work that you're doing at the MRC to protect free speech.
Yeah, so our website is mrcfreespeechamerica.org. That's where you learn about First Amendment free speech rights and big tech censorship. The other avenue to learn more about media bias is our newsbusters.org site. So those are two sites that people go to as primary sources for these kinds of data points and studies.
Outstanding. Well, as we get more on the SCOTUS decision and all of that stuff, and as this continues to develop, we'll keep in touch with you and bring you back. I'm looking forward to it because you know your stuff, and I always appreciate your input. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Rich.
You bet. Godspeed. And amigos, we come back with your calls and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, and it's a tradition on this program, which, again, is as old as I am. Back, I was born in 1978. Back in 1978, Larry King was forming and molding this show into what, it's become over the decades. And he said, we're going to make a segment called Open Phones America. And that's where people from all across the country get to call in and sound off on what's going on. And I love that. And my predecessor, the late Jim Bohannon, he continued that tradition for the 3 decades he was at the helm. And Open Phones Across America continued. And we continue that, you and I, on these airwaves every single night. And I love the opportunity to speak with people all across the country. I feel like talk radio should be interactive. People should call in. And it's always an honor to speak with people all across the country. So I want to go to WFOY in St. Augustine, Florida, and check in with Walter. Walter, what's up, my man? You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hola de nuevo, Rich. Always good to speak to you, too. Appreciate you.
Hola, Walter. Thank you, sir. Very kind of you.
Thank you. Rich, one of the toughest men to ever wear shoes, Curtis Sliwa. He's back on patrol on the subways. Yeah, he's back on the patrol on the subways, and he's walking Stillwell Avenue, the F train route, and he's completely unafraid, even shaking hands, bare hands with the homeless. And Rich, he hopes to get the Angels back on patrol. And Rich, I hope he gets to Gracie Mansion. How about you?
Oh, let me take a few minutes here to address what you're saying. First, I want to thank you for acknowledging my brother Curtis Sliwa. And the reason I'm on a microphone today is a few people that were involved in this, right? And I always mention them publicly because I'm grateful to them, and I always will be. And one of those people is the great one, Mark Levin. Another one of those people is Curtis Sliwa, and another third person there, John Batchelor. These guys worked with me. I worked alongside them for a number of years and really poured into me everything they knew about talk radio. And I try my best to, add a little bit of myself, but to, make these guys proud because they really are experts at their craft. And I can tell you with respect to Curtis Sliwa, I know he's back on patrol. Why? Because he sent me a text. He sent me a text of an article that came out in the New York Post, and it had a photo of him and some of the original guys that were with him when he started patrolling back in 1977. And I thought, man, that is fantastic. So, it's great to see that they're back on the trains. They're patrolling people. For years, people have been asking for them to come back. the police department hasn't always been favorable to the Guardian Angels. Some have thought they were a vigilante group, and others were, like Mayor Giuliani's administration, were very welcoming. Like you, Walter, I agree. Curtis Sliwa is not only a national treasure, but he's a hero in New York, and we need more courageous New Yorkers like that on those trains. Because I can tell you, when I was a kid, I remember being on a subway with my mom, little chubby Richie V, right? And we were on the train, and that's the same line, right? Right adjacent to it. I rode the D line, the Q line, and occasionally the F would come on our tracks. But that was the orange line and the yellow, the Q line. And I remember we were going somewhere to either DeKalb Avenue or somewhere in downtown Brooklyn. And two guys get into an altercation on the train. And I feel my mom, in the beginning, she doesn't care, but she puts her arm like across my lap. And then, I'm like 6 years old, and she starts pulling me closer and closer. And it's like a Puerto Rican guy and a black guy. And they're getting into it, and the black guy's like motioning. I remember seeing this. He put his hand under like a hooded sweater, motioning like he had something in his waistband. And the other guy, Puerto Rican guy or Hispanic guy, he pulled out a switchblade, and he was like, "Go ahead, what you gonna do?" And these guys were, right there, like, I don't know, 18 inches in front of me. And my mom was pulling me closer and closer, keeping me under the wing there. And at first it was kind of exciting. I was like, "Oh wow, look at this!" But then after a while, it was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is good anymore. Point is, we get off the train, and she looks at me and she says, "There's never a cop when you need one, but usually there's a guardian angel." And again, that was early 80s. And that's the impact that the Guardian Angels had on the subways back when I was a kid, when crime was similar to what it is now. At least nobody was getting set on fire back then. So, Walter, from your lips to God's ears, I hope Curtis Sliwa ends up in the New York City mayor's mansion, Gracie Mansion. And that's my hope and prayer as well, Walter.
Yep. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And speaking of your mom, you just spoke of her. Hope you will see her again on the other side.
Amen to that, brother. Thank you. You're such a good guy, Walter. I appreciate it. Shout out to WFOY in St. Augustine, Florida. Folks, are going to come right back to the rest of your calls all across America. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We go to the phones, open phones across America, live and national, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Ziggy calling us from Marcel, Illinois, WLS in the building. Ziggy, go for it.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I looked at my little computer phone. I got a picture of you. We got the same barber. I like it. I just want to let you know, and I'm not going to get into politics or anything else. I commend you. I listen to your show every night. I think you are among the greatest.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Ziggy. I appreciate it. And listen, let me tell you, yes, I have the best head of hair in talk radio, hands down. Shout out to you, Ziggy. I appreciate it. David in Minnesota and everybody else that's on hold, stick around. We're going to do more calls in the next hour. If you're on one of the stations that doesn't carry the coveted third hour of this program, talk to your local program directors. Tell them you need the third hour of the Rich Valdez Show. Anyway, folks, we're coming right back. We're live, we're national, and I'm still Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to our program. We're live, we're national, and here is our phone number if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And there's a lot to talk about today. Trump made a lot of very big pronouncements at his press conference in Mar-a-Lago today about a lot of international topics, and we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about the climate. We're going to talk about banning water heaters. That's what Biden's planning on doing. And we're going to talk about a bunch. But I want to start off with a quick announcement and an invitation, if you will, for you all to call the show a little earlier. For those of you that are on hold, thank you. For those of you that are typically call in the next hour of the show, I want to encourage you to call this hour of the show. Why? I'll tell you why. Because starting on January 1st, we started airing the program in more markets and in more radio stations across America. And in order to maximize the amount of calls that we take, given the amount of time zones that we're in, the best time to call is between 9 or 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time. While I typically do open phones across America from midnight to 1 a.m., a lot of people won't be able to hear it if you call in at that time. So the best time to call would be now, and that's the best I could tell you, because I miss some of my regulars, and I know they're probably calling us a little bit later, and there's just been a little shift in how the program is carried, because it's being carried on more radio stations. So amen, praise God, hallelujah for that. And of course, again, the number for that, 833-482-5337. But fear not, open phones across America continues. Now, I want to talk a little bit about El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, because he's man of the hour today. He had this big press conference where he talked about a number of things, and not the least of which was acquiring Panama, the Panama Canal, I should say, acquiring Canada as the 51st state, acquiring Greenland, raining holy hell on Hamas if they don't release the terrorists, and a bunch of other things, not the least of which was energy, and we're going to get into that momentarily. I really want to get into some of that. But Trump really laid things out today. And I thought it was great because, he doesn't just simply talk about the political platitudes, but he talks about what ultimately happens, right, as part of the deal. And I think that's very important. Also important that, he questions the establishment on things that need to be asked, right? We're in the wake of January 6th, and he was asking questions about why don't we know about the January 6th bomber? What's going on with the FBI's reputation? What's going on with Jack Smith? Right? He talked about a lot of things today. And I think these are all really good things. Now, we have a clip with respect to Judge Aileen Cannon. This is from CNN. Listen to this.
Well, the 11th Circuit would be hearing a case that had already been decided in many other districts, that special prosecutors are legal, but this is a case that Judge Cannon, and we know that she has done some very unusual decisions, to say the least, that all favor, Donald Trump in many controversial ways, has issued that order temporarily blocking the portion, at least the portion of the report on classified documents. That's raising questions about the jurisdiction. One senior law enforcement official telling NBC News the Justice Department has concluded that a federal rule in the Southern District of Florida likely means the classified documents portion cannot be made public, but they are right on deadline. Incoming Justice Department officials are expected to block the report if this drags out past the inauguration, and many of them are the defense lawyers that have been issuing the legal briefs to try to block them, who are going to then, if they are confirmed, move over to the Justice Department.
Now, this is, again, in response to Judge Cannon blocking Jack Smith's report. President Trump talked about that as well, but giving a quick response with respect to what he thought initially about this. And he weighed in on that, saying, well, it's good, and that's how it should be. Listen to this.
So what you're saying is I'm just hearing that they're not allowed to issue the report. So if they're not allowed to issue the report, that's the way it should be, because he was thrown off the case in disgrace. Why should he be allowed to write a fake report? It'll only be a fake report. That's great news. Good.
And Trump expounded a little bit on that when he went to talk about Jack Smith, because ultimately he had a lot of things to say about Jack Smith. Listen to this.
Remember, this is a man that said he wants the transition to be smooth. Well, you don't do the kind of things. You don't have a judge working real hard to try and embarrass you, because I did nothing wrong. By the way, I did nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. If I did something wrong, I wouldn't be standing here right now, because I've won all these cases. Nobody's ever won so many cases as I have against the Justice Department. I mean, Jack Smith had cases all over the place. People were being subpoenaed. Lives were being ruined. They were spending everything they had, money. We were helping them out. We had to. They were subpoenaing people that had no idea what they were even talking about. That's a sick group of people. And it was all to influence the election. It was all a fight against a political opponent. We've never had that in this country. We have had that in certain countries. We've had that in third-tier countries. We've had that in banana republics, but we've never had that in a place like the United States. I don't even know if it's been on a small level. I'm sure it has been on a small level, but this was the largest level ever. They brought this moron out of The Hague. He's a mean guy. He's a mean, nasty guy. His picture was perfect, because you look at his picture, you say, that's a bad guy with his robe, his purple robe. And he executes people. He shouldn't be allowed to execute people, because he'll execute everybody. He's a nut job. But we won all of those cases with him.
And again, this is President Trump in response to Judge Eileen Cannon ruling that the report cannot be disseminated or whatnot. And that was his response. So in true Trump fashion, he applauded it, which is good. And, of course, he decided to throw a couple more shots at Jack Smith, because why not, right? He's a moron from The Hague. You got to love that. Anyway, I want to talk about the climate, because President Trump also discussed climate. And he brought up a number of things, right? There was a few things that he talked about tonight about how energy pricing would go down. And I thought that was a very interesting thing, because, man, we need that. So I want to talk about the energy prices and how they're going to handle offshore drilling and so much more when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So there's a new federal rule that's targeting certain gas water heaters. The Biden administration wants to ban water heaters. I mean, this is crazy. We'll get into that in a second. But President Trump was blasting the Biden administration for this, and really for their other positions. Listen to this.
Biden's actions yesterday on offshore drilling, banning offshore drilling, will not stand. I will reverse it immediately. It'll be done immediately. And we will drill, baby, drill. And we're going to be drilling in a lot of other locations. And the energy costs are going to come way down. they'll be brought down to a very low level, and that's going to bring everything else down. That's what caused it to go up, along with the ridiculous spending on the Green New scam. All this money, trillions of dollars. It's like throwing it right out the window, what they're doing. And they're trying to spend so much now. They're just taking money and giving it to anybody that wants it for any project at all, if it's certified under the Green New scam. And they don't work, and it's too expensive. And, they told me that we're going to do everything possible to make this transition to the new administration very smooth.
Yeah, and this Green New scam has not been very smooth for the American people. The Green New scam is truly where they're doubling down. And again, I don't know that it's intentional sabotage. I think a lot of it's just stupidity. Biden's just not the brightest guy, and I think he's just on the wrong side of these issues. But perhaps I'm being too generous. But this new rule that's calling for the ban of water heaters, or his call to, continue disallowing drilling, all of these things ultimately impact energy and energy prices, which impact food prices. And I want to get to the bottom of this with somebody who understands this topic a little bit differently than I do, because he made a whole movie about it, right? He made a movie called The Climate According to Al Gore. He's a documentary filmmaker from Los Angeles, and he's the president of Highway 61 Entertainment. Joel Gilbert is with us. Joel, welcome.
Okay, great to be here tonight. Thank you.
You bet. Now, when you hear President Trump reacting to Biden and his unwillingness to drill, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I think this is just more of the same. Biden's been on vacation for about 40% of his presidency. I think it's the same people, the handlers that had been directing Biden what to do for the past several years, are simply having their last hurrah here. It's their last chance to implement these policies that nobody voted for, and they can simply tell Biden to, make some declarations and do this and do that, and he's kind of following through with all of it. So I don't think these guys are done, but I think they think this is their last chance to implement these policies that nobody voted for.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when it comes to the water heaters, these new standards apparently are calling for the new tankless gas water heaters to use less energy than the less efficient current models, and this is where the debate seems to be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it all goes back to what I show in my new film, The Climate According to AI, Al Gore. Look, the entire idea of climate science started with Al Gore. He's kind of the godfather of it. He came out with his book in 1992 called Earth in the Balance, best-selling manifesto. And the idea that he presented was that there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it's going to doom the planet, and human beings have to change the way we live in so many ways. Cars, water heaters, growing crops, the whole world has to be controlled. But I reveal in my film that Al Gore made it up. He falsely claimed he got his science out of his Harvard professor's class in 1969, and I researched it and found that his Harvard professor completely did not even agree with anything Gore was saying. In reality, Gore got his climate science out of divinity school, where he went in 1971 to get out of the Vietnam War. He studied with these radical environmental professors and read these wacky books, and that's how he came up with this idea. So the water heaters is just one more thing, and it's part of the same old scam to force these same socialist solutions on Americans that we would never vote for. It's all about central planning and wealth redistribution. It's an attack on the free market system. It's an attack on freedom and prosperity to limit growth and harm the free market system. And the water heaters is just the latest thing. It's all under the guise of you really need to help save the planet and you're doing a good thing. But really it's the same scam that wants to impose socialist solutions on an American economy and harm the economy.
Folks, again, I want to remind you we're on with Joel Gilbert. He's the director of The Climate According to AI, Al Gore. And this is a documentary film that he recently produced. And I want you to tell us a little bit about the film, because I think it's an interesting title, The Climate According to AI, Al Gore. How did you come up with this idea of an AI Al Gore?
Well, I worked for Al Gore. I was actually a student intern for him when he was a conservative U.S. Senator from Tennessee, and I got to know him a little bit at that time. And when I decided to research Gore's claims, Gore claimed, he said, look, I'm no scientist, but I got my scientific information from my Harvard professor. And I realized no one ever looked into it. So I went down to the University of California, San Diego, and found the course in his professor's papers that Al Gore took from him was all about human populations. It was about the population explosion. It had nothing to do with climate science, number one. Gore gets a C in that class. And I read all the writings of his professor, and he completely disagrees with Al Gore. So I actually emailed Al Gore and said, I'd like to interview you. I've researched your professor, and he knows me. He should have responded. When he didn't respond, I figured, wait a minute, today you can actually upload a voice sample and a video sample of anybody, and you can create from these different websites an AI version of that person, and it looks like them and it sounds just like them. So in this movie, I actually interview Al Gore, and but it's the AI version, and we get an honest depiction of his real life story and what he really sold the world, because he is probably the most influential person in modern times, because he sold this whole climate narrative, this whole climate panic idea to the world. Today there's trillions spent on this idea, and I think I prove it's completely made up. And if you go to climatealgore.com, you can actually see the movie trailer and link up where to watch the movie.
Well, you know what? We've got a clip of the trailer, and I want to play it real quick. Listen to this, folks.
We have a global emergency, an existential threat to human civilization on this planet as we know it.
Al Gore is the godfather of the worldwide climate change movement. He even won the Nobel Prize. When I was a student, I worked for Al Gore. But wait a minute, Al Gore is no scientist.
Well, this man's name was Roger Revelle, and that's the whole reason why I got interested in this.
Did Revelle even agree with the climate theories that Al Gore sold to the world? I decided to dig deep and do the research. Dear Senator Gore, I would love to interview you about Revelle and learn more about your journey in climate science as well as your personal history. Gore didn't respond, so I decided to use AI technology to speak to Al Gore.
Well, hello again, Joel.
Senator Gore.
I'm thrilled to have a visit with one of my old student interns.
Are you ready for some questions?
Fire away.
AI Al Gore, the climate according to AI Al Gore. If you haven't seen it, make sure you do. The website is climatealgore.com, highway61entertainment.com. Joel Gilbert is the director. And Joel, how do people follow you on social media? Where do they go?
If you go to, I'm on Twitter a lot, it's Joel S. Gilbert, Joel S. Gilbert. If you go to my website, climatealgore.com, that can link you up. And this really blows the lid off the whole climate narrative, all the climate panic, all these different organizations that turned it into a big religion. This shows you that it was all based on a fairy tale by Al Gore.
Outstanding. Folks, check out the film. Joel Gilbert, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it, sir.
All right, thank you.
You bet. All right, amigos, your calls are coming up right now. We're going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about Trump taking Canada, taking Greenland, what's going on with Puerto Rico, and so much more. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez, Open Phones Across America.
Well, you, of course, have a track record now. People have heard you, and they know that, in fact, you've got the goods. You have the talent, and you have the ability to do a superb job.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we continue our conversation with you all, the American people, we the people. Our phone number is 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we've been talking about a number of things tonight, not the least of which is Trump and all of his international ambition. We've been talking about the Zuckerberg rolling back the censorship agenda and saying he's getting rid of the fact checkers, and a story that I'm about to get into about eliminating teacher standards in New Jersey, basic skills testing for teachers. They don't even need to know how to do math now to become a certified teacher in New Jersey. That's scary. But before we do that, I want to get to your calls. Let's go to Jane, Saratoga, New York, WGDJ. Jane, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. First of all, your call screener, Alex, he is awesome. Now, Rich, you have been with us for years and years, and you always cover the best out there, and you cover it honestly. And Trump was great, and I say we go with the Gulf of America, and you need to stay with us because you are the best out there, truly.
Oh,
and I know I should have talked about more important things tonight, but truly, you really are the best, and you cover it honestly. And I'll tell you what, people love you, and you've been with us for years, so don't leave us, okay?
I'm not going anywhere. No, we're actually expanding the show, and that's why I'm asking people to call in a little bit earlier so that we can have a more robust open phones across America and still bring you a guest every hour and open phones every hour as we reach more and more Americans. So thank you, Jane, for your kind words. The check is in the mail. Trust me. Believe me, like Trump would say. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. And big shout out to everybody calling in from New York on WGDJ. Let's continue. Let's go to South Carolina, WTMA, and check in with Robert. Robert, go for it.
Okay, you asked about whether Mark Zuckerberg would become another Elon Musk. I don't think he would because they have different personalities, I noticed. I was at KKBE with Mark Zuckerberg, and we were going to have our picture taken with a whole group there. And I noticed him coming into the room. He made sure that every hair on his head was absolutely perfect and that his photographer was there. Then I left for a second, and I came back into the room, and I didn't see him. But actually, he had mixed in with a group of people posing for their pictures already so perfectly that I didn't even notice him. In other words, he's that kind of person who does that. He blends in very nicely. He has his little hoodie, even though he's way out of that age range already. But I guess he figures he like blends in nicely that way. Exactly. And Elon Musk is more the opposite. Elon Musk, if he feels like doing something, in matter of fact, he prefers, he likes to do something, strike out on his own and do something amazing and unusual and a challenge and that kind of thing. Not that Zuckerberg doesn't like a challenge, but as I say, Zuckerberg tendentially loves to blend in more than and be successful that way.
Well, Robert, I think that's an interesting nuance that you picked up on there. But really, my reference was really more to the free speech absolutism, the fact that Elon Musk, who's been a Democrat, similar to, I guess, to Musk, who's kind of changed his ways because he realized, you know what, we're not able to talk anymore. We can't have a dissenting opinion. Things have drastically changed. It's so bad that I'm going to go and buy Twitter and rename it X and do all these things that he did. And I have to say, he did a real service to America in doing that. I also think that Zuckerberg doing what he's doing today is also a service to America. And whether he's sincere or not, it doesn't matter so much, honestly. I think why? Because he has to now compete with Elon Musk. Whether he really becomes like Musk or not doesn't matter. What matters is people will leave that platform and go to X. And the fact that Elon Musk is slowly but surely making X profitable and gaining popularity, and there's no question. Elon Musk spent a couple of $100 million, right, to make donations in the last election. Zuckerberg spent something like $400 million in the 2020 election against Trump, and it didn't work out. So I think he realized, man, I spent double the money that Musk spent, or close to it, and I don't have the same influence, right? He was never welcomed into the Biden White House, nor, and I'm not saying he wanted to be, but he didn't really get himself a trusted partner. Instead, he got himself, asked to censor people and whatnot, at least, taking him at his word. So I think he realizes that, the Musk approach is a more solid approach that really is favored by the people. People don't want to be censored, myself included. And that was really where I was going with it. But I appreciate you pointing out that nuance. And I agree, yeah, definitely different personalities, but similar in the respect that they're both kind of weird. And they both have a lot of money, a lot of money, which is good for them, I guess. I've never been the richest guy in the world, and I don't know that I ever will be. But those guys each have had a shot at that at different points in time, and that's got to be pretty cool. Robert in Charleston, South Carolina, thank you. Now, I'll tell you, people who are definitely not making a smart choice, that are not going to be the richest person in the world, the people that are advocating for teachers in New Jersey to not pass a basic skills test when it comes to like math and reading and writing. If this is what you expect of the child that's in your classroom, why wouldn't you do it yourself to become a certified teacher in the state of New Jersey? Now, I guess you could argue that this is assumed, or that this is par for the course for someone that just graduated college and whatnot. But it was literally part of the New Jersey State Teachers Certification Exam, and it's not anymore. It's been removed at the behest of the teachers union. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and I'm going to play a little report for you as well when we come back. But this is an interesting story, so I want you to keep it locked right here, folks. And let me give you the number again: 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And when we return, again, I'm going to continue taking your calls on everything that you want to talk about, right? On open phones across America, we talk about whatever you want to talk about, as well as whatever we've talked about this evening. And I want to get your opinion on the audio that I'm going to play for you, where the New Jersey Teachers Union is out there advocating for less standards instead of stricter standards for their teachers and the education that they bring to the table, which seems counterintuitive. So I've got a really good back and forth conversation coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
Hey, Rich, thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of all J6ers for giving everybody a platform literally since day one, being one of the brave and courageous people who actually use your platform to help people get the truth out.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our late night national town hall conversation. Give us a call now. Next hour, we have an interview with Nicole Parker from the FBI, and I don't want you to miss that. So make sure you get your calls in now if you want to join us, 833-4Valdez. But first, I want to bring in a new topic and a couple of cool dates in history, right? For example, today in 1927, January 7th, 1927, the telephone service between New York and London was inaugurated as the transatlantic telephone. And that's pretty cool. Let's see. What else did we have? In 1979, the Cambodian government of Pol Pot was overthrown. Thank God we took out a commie. That's fantastic. And in 1999, on January 7th, United States President Bill Clinton's impeachment trial opened in the United States Senate. Of course, you know the rest was history. The blue dress. And something that I neglected to mention yesterday has a perfect segue for what we're talking about now. And that is this little fun fact right here. In 1838, January 6th, so yesterday, in Morristown, New Jersey, Samuel Morse and his partner, Alfred Vail, publicly demonstrated their new invention, the telegraph, for the first time. How about that? I thought that was pretty cool. So, speaking of New Jersey, I want to bring your attention to this story. Now, I've got a clip. It's about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, of a back and forth between a reporter and somebody who was speaking out against the New Jersey Education Association, the teachers union, for dumbing down the standards for your children's teachers. Listen to this.
January 1st, it eliminated a basic skills test that teachers would have to pass to become certified to teach, and an investigation conducted by Parents Defending Education revealing where $100 million of your tax dollars went that was supposed to address school violence. Joining us now is Erica Zanzi, the Director of Outreach for Parents Defending Education. Erica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. And let's start with this new law in New Jersey that will eliminate the requirement that a teacher candidate complete a basic skills test. Now, when you first hear this, red flags go up. But what are your thoughts on this? Is this the right move at this point?
I don't think it is. I mean, this is part of a trend. New Jersey is doing what New York has already done. It's important to know that the teachers union, specifically in this case, the NEA, pushed really hard for this. And I'm a former member of the NEA in 2 states, and generally whatever they push for tends to be something that's not particularly good for students. And so really the NEA wants to eliminate all barriers to teaching because that increases their number of dues paying members. And when that's your mission, student learning and quality control really aren't priorities at all. So that's a concern for sure. And I would also just say, having taken one of these tests, I think back in 1998, these are basic skills tests.
I was going to ask you, what is on these tests? Because it says basic, and I'm just thinking of basic. What are we talking about here?
So back when I took it in 1998 in Massachusetts, it was called a communication and literacy test. The test that New Jersey had is called the Praxis. So it included basic literacy, which meant reading, writing, and math. But again, these are low rigor tests. This is not, we're not talking about the LSAT here. And so the fact that the failure rates on these tests have been so high for so long, that is a problem. But that's really an indictment of not only the education system that these aspiring teachers are coming out of, but the colleges of education that give them a degree, even though they're not remotely qualified. They can't even pass, these basic minimum requirement tests, because the colleges of education get paid whether or not these graduates of theirs end up being able to get over these hurdles. So, but I think teacher shortages are real in some subjects. That is true. But eliminating the test requirement, in my opinion, does not bode well for students that are still, trying to recover from massive learning losses during the pandemic.
You got that right.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And this conversation, I wanted to give it to you in its entirety, A, because I love context, and B, because it's got to be discussed, right? This is not something we should do. I don't think we should relax these standards. Now, I understand some people are making the argument that, listen, come on, Rich, it's clear if they went through high school, if they went through college, and they got to the point of taking such an exam, that they don't even need to prove this. But I would submit to you, my argument to this would be, if it's that easy for them to pass, then let it be there. Let it be a give me. Let it be a freebie, so that parents and the rest of the people that pay the salaries of public educators have something to rely on, right? There's nothing wrong with a check and a balance. And I think that's one that we have as the public. We lose that and give more power to this teachers union. And ceding power to any union is never a good idea. I mean, when unions get all sorts of power, what do you think happens, right? Just remember that longshoreman strike. Remember any strike, right? All sorts of strikes happen. Ultimately, during the strike, guess who loses? You and me. It's never anybody else besides you and me that loses, right? Somebody else wins, and it's never us. It's the worker, and I'm not trying to pit the people versus the worker per se, but I have to be on the side of the people because I'm the people. Right? If I was in an internal struggle because of the worker, right? Me being the worker, if I was in a negotiation, I can't bring you people into that. I can't say, well, if I don't get what I want in my job, then everybody else is screwed. You can't really do that. can't hold up. I mean, I could say I'm not coming to work, but I can't hold up the entire radio. But that's what, in effect, these unions do, is they said, we're holding up the whole radio. There'll be no, like the writer's strike, right? There were no movies for X amount of time. Couldn't go to the movies and see a new movie. There was nothing going on. This isn't how things should be, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, on Zuckerberg and everything else. Let's hit the phones. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go for it.
Yeah, I don't care what to say about you, Rich. I like you anyway.
Thanks, brother.
I'm going to tell you the Zuckerberg thing. I don't want to prejudge him, but you might be right. He might be, he wants to do the thing that will make him the most popular. However, our forefathers, they talked about the patriot that loses everything, his property, almost his life, his family. And when he becomes successful, the timid will follow. And I think that might be his problem. He wants to be loved and adored like Trump and Elon. And he wants in on, he wants to be a part of it now because his money hasn't done him any good, hasn't been satisfying to his life and so on. And not everybody is like you and me that the consequences be damned, we're going to do the right thing,
Right.
But that's what I see going on there with him. What do you think?
I think you're probably right. And I'm always willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And while we're here, I'm going to invite Mark Zuckerberg to come on the show. I don't know if he'll accept the invitation, but he's welcome to come and join us and set the record straight. But I think you're right. I think that there is, and I think that's true for many of these mega rich, right? And again, I'm never criticizing them. I'd love to be amongst them one day. I'd love to be in the 1%. But I agree in that when you have all this money, you become motivated by different things. For Musk, it's space exploration and pushing a lot of boundaries, Neuralink, chips in the brain and all that stuff, self-driving cars, bulletproof cars. For Zuckerberg, it's improving his existing massive business, this virtual reality that they've added to Meta and whatnot with the goggles and all that. And for Bill Gates, for example, it's the vaccines and how he can control humanity and all these other things. For Soros, it's same thing. How do we control humanity? How do we fix wrongs, right? How do we keep black men from going to prison? Stop arresting them, right? That was his philosophy, not help them with poverty, help them with an education, help them to avoid becoming part of the system. He wants to avoid them becoming part of the system by not correcting behavior or changing circumstances, but by saying, just don't arrest them. Let them continue what they're doing, but don't arrest them, and putting these prosecutors in place. Ultimately, none of that stuff works. So, Joe, I think you might be onto something. Folks, big shout out to everybody in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we continue, right? We continue our late night national conversation, but we have to wrap up because that time has come. And straight ahead, a conversation with Nicole Parker about the latest news with respect to the shooter, the assassin, the crazy man that shot up people on Bourbon Street and ran them over. They found some sulfuric acid in a storage facility. We have the report on that coming up next. And Nicole Parker, former FBI agent who left the FBI because of her disdain for the FBI, will join us to give us her reaction to what's going on and what we can expect. And, of course, always a pleasure to be with you, folks. Hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless you. And good night, America. I'm Rich Valdez.